Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. I'm Nick. Today, checking out the new album from Linkin Park, From Zero. There's a bunch of links down below. You got links for the Vinyl Den Facebook group, for the merch page, for the Spotify and Apple Music playlist that I put together every week, and the Patreon page. So make sure you check all that out. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time I release new episodes. So Linkin Park just released their 8th studio album, From Zero, on November 15th. This is the follow-up to their 2017 album, One More Light, which got a lot of really mixed reviews, but I thought it was really like a return to form album for the band. But so after Chester Bennington unfortunately died in 2017, I kind of thought that was going to be the end of Linkin Park, because it was always going to be really difficult for the band to replace Chester. He's one of those band members, he's a lead singer that is irreplaceable. So I was really surprised to see not only that they replaced him, but they were going to release a whole new album. So the title of the album, From Zero, is a reference not only to the original name of Linkin Park, which is Zero with an X. It's also the beginning or a reference to the beginning of this new chapter with Emily on vocals and with Colin Britton on drums. And regardless of what anyone thinks of this new album, I think it's always going to be unfair to take an album like From Zero and compare this to, some of the band's best albums, whether it's Hybrid Theory or Meteora. But when you replace a lead singer or replace such an integral part of the band like Chester was, I think you're always going to have those comparisons. And I want to give Linkin Park a lot of credit for thinking outside the box. This is one thing I've always knocked AC/DC on, was after the death of Bon Scott, I think they would have been better served to go in a different direction, musically, at least with the lead singer. They brought in Brian Johnson, I think basically because he sounded really similar to Bon Scott. And that's one thing I did not want to see Linkin Park do. I didn't want them to bring in somebody else and basically just be like a copycat vocalist for what they were doing with Chester. Because in those instances, it's never going to live up to what the original version of the band was. So with them bringing in Emily, yes, vocally, there is some similarities between her and Chester, but not a lot. And then, listening to these songs, you're never going to confuse her for anything that they did with Chester. And the first couple of times I listened to this album, listening to the album straight through, it's a pretty short album. I think it's only like 32 minutes long, just under 32 minutes long. There's 11 tracks. It sounds sonically like a Linkin Park album, but also it doesn't sound like a Linkin Park album. And I think it's the best praise I can give the album is musically they tried to still connect themselves to what the band was previously, while also still going in a completely different direction and trying to do their own thing and trying to have this album stand up on its own merits. Because Linkin Park has always been a band that has never been afraid to take risks. And they took a lot of risks, I think, on this album, and I think a lot of it worked out. And, I think that there's a lot of bands out there put in the same situation. They probably would have played it a little more safe on this first album. And say whatever you want about Emily, and some people are complaining about things she's done in her personal life, and some of the stuff she's done musically. Say whatever you want about her. She can sing, and she really proves that on this album. And there's a lot of people out there that are never going to give this album a shot because they're replacing Chester, and they don't think that the band can ever live up to those high expectations that they did earlier in their career with Chester and the band. And I think they're really missing out on what is really a good album. So when they announced they were going to be releasing this new album, they also released the first single off of it, which is The Emptiness Machine, which I think is a perfect fit for being the lead single, and I think it's one of the strongest tracks on the album. And then after they released that first single, I decided, you know what, I'm going to hold off. I'm not going to listen to anything else until this album is released, because I was going into it with caution, I guess being cautiously optimistic. And then I heard that first track, and I was like, okay, well, I think this could be something that, it's never going to be Hybrid Theory. It's never going to be Meteora. But after listening to that first single, I thought, hey, this might be some of the, musically, some of the best stuff that they've done in a long time. And then earlier this week, I listened to the second single, Heavy as the Crown. And going through the song the first time, it sounds like it could be something, straight off of Meteora. And then they released the song Over Each Other as the third single. And I think this is the song where Emily really takes the reins and really makes this song her own. And it's one of the stronger tracks on the album also. And then initially I thought they misstepped a little bit with the fourth single, which is Two Faced, because the first time I listened to it, I didn't quite get the song. And then I listened to it a couple more times, and it's really grown on me. First off, it's really catchy, but it sounds like a track that it doesn't sound like it could be off of Hybrid Theory, but I think it's reminiscent of some tracks that are on that album. And there is an expanded version of this album that's got 3 additional tracks. I don't think it's available on streaming services, though. I know it's available to buy off of Apple Music. Maybe it will be eventually on streaming. I didn't see it when I was doing my review of it. So I didn't actually listen to, or I haven't had a chance to listen to those 3 tracks. I only listened to the 11 tracks that are on the standard version of it. And going through the album, there's only one track that I wouldn't even call it a skippable track. It's one that I don't think quite works with the rest of the album, and that's the song Casualty. I know a lot of people have raved about the song. It's probably the hardest or heaviest song that Linkin Park has ever done in their career, but I think in the context of this album, it doesn't quite work the way that the band wanted it to. And I guess really the only knock I can give the album is, if you're going to do an expanded edition already, when the album comes out, just take those extra 3 tracks and just put them on with the main album. If they do the 14 tracks instead of the 13, the album goes from, I think it's like 32 minutes to 42 minutes. So you get an extra 10 minutes of music out of those 3 tracks. So initially I wasn't going to pre-order this album. And then, like I said, I listened to the first track when they announced the album. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to hold off and listen to the full album, and maybe I'll pick up a copy. And even as of the beginning of the week when I did my new release video, I was still on the fence on whether or not I was going to pre-order it. And then I listened to the next couple, those next 3 singles. And I think by the time I had gotten like halfway through the 3rd single, I had made up my mind. I think I got right on Amazon and pre-ordered a copy of it. So the album is co-produced by Mike Shinoda and Colin Britton. And Colin has worked with a bunch of musicians over the years. He's produced a lot of other albums. And the one thing I can say about the production work on this album is a lot of music from the 2010s. When I listen to a new album, I know a lot of people complain about the compression of music. In the 2020s, I expect an album to be, in some cases, really overly compressed. This album is not. They did a great job producing this album. This thing is mixed perfectly. I've got, as far as the production side of it goes, I've got 0 complaints on this album. Then you got a song like Overflow, where the song itself kind of starts off a little clunky, but then it really takes off. And I think that track really shines. And Stained is a track that's kind of similar to that. And Stained, the first time I listened to it, I didn't quite think that the song worked the way it could have worked. And then once I listened to it a second time, I was like hooked on that song. I listened to that song like 3 or 4 times in a row before I listened to the rest of the album. It's probably my favorite track on the album. And then you get a song like I Give You Everything I Have, which I think is musically a little similar to Casualty, and maybe that's why I'm not such a huge fan of it. And it's definitely on the heavier side of Linkin Park's catalog. And I think maybe that's kind of maybe my issue with it is I don't think that's where Linkin Park really excels. Even though it's still not a skippable track, I think it's one that, I might I think I kind of do without that song. And throughout Linkin Park's career, I think the one thing they've really excelled at is placing songs in the correct order. And I'm somebody that is, the order of songs on an album is really important to me. I know it's, in this day and age, it really isn't to a lot of other people out there because we live in a streaming age where people just listen to singles. But as far as the overall structure of the album, I think they did a really good job with this one. And it ends with a song called Good Things Go, which it's I don't want to call it a ballad, but it's definitely like a slower song, probably the slowest song on the album. And I think is absolutely a perfect way to end this album. It's one that, this and Stained, I think are easily my 2 favorite tracks on the album. So you haven't figured it out yet. I think this is a really good album, but I'm going to score it really high. I'm going to knock it a little bit for Casualty, for I Give You Everything I Have. Those are and like I said, they're neither one are, I think, skippable tracks. I don't think they could take either one of those songs off the album because they add a little bit of the variation musically on the album. I think overall, though, I think I'd give it an 8.5. And I think that 8.5 is probably a conservative number. I might be able to go up to 9. I'll definitely have to listen to this album a couple more times, but I went into this optimistic, cautiously optimistic is the word I've used for it. And I was really impressed with this new album. I think this is an album that, is it Hybrid Theory? Is it Meteora? No. But I would probably rank it just behind those two albums. And I think it's neck and neck with Minutes to Midnight as to which one is the third best album. I think overall, Minutes to Midnight might be better in some ways, but there's a couple of songs off this new album that I think are better than anything that they did on that album. And this is an album that I can easily see being in my top 5 at the end of the year. I like it that much. So as far as the physical version of it, I decided to go with the Amazon, I think it's the Amazon exclusive. I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet, so I just opened it up. I haven't had, I'm not sure about the sound quality of it, but I'm sure it's going to sound fantastic. I do like the album artwork. I have seen some people complain about that, but I like the Linkin Park logo on there. I like the design of it. It's something a little different. There's the back cover, just a picture of the band and the track listing. And this does come in a printed inner sleeve. I think it just has lyrics on there. Here's the back side of it. And then this is on a translucent, it's like a bluish green. It's a really nice color. I think it goes well with the album artwork. I think this is one of the rare new albums that have come out this year that I'm probably going to end up picking up on CD also. Like I said, I think it's that good of an album. Well, that's all I got for you today, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. Make sure you drop me a comment down below. Love to know what you guys think of this new Linkin Park album. Have you checked it out yet? Have you bought a copy of it? What do you think of it? How would you rate it? Let me know what you guys think. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. That's all I got. Until next time, keep on spinning. Peace.